Uh, Welcome to our one-to-one interview again. Today we're with both Cerup-Simonsen from Mærsk Mc-Kinney Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping. Welcome, Bo.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great stuff to see you. It's very interesting to have the Mærsk Mc-Kinney Møller Center as so early in its development. Can you tell us a little bit about the center, please?
Absolutely. The center has been established by the A.P. Møller Foundation, and we are established as a completely new, independent legal entity. We have been strategized and we have been shaped, I would say, very much by the influence of 7 big companies. And that means that it's really industry, big industrial companies taking a lead, stepping forward and actually, I think, giving birth to this center with a strategy and initial plans and so on. And then we have donation from the A.P. Møller Foundation. So now we have a completely new entity in place, and it's now very much up to us to pursue our mission of helping to accelerate decarbonization. And in that, we will be collaborating with an ever-growing number of companies and authorities and NGOs and so on. So yeah, it's a very exciting time.
So I guess with 7 companies, could you? And I've heard that Alfa Laval have become the latest to join. Who else is part of it? And I guess Maersk is part of that mix, is it?
Absolutely. So initially, the 7 companies that coined the idea and started this up was Maersk. And so if you take the European companies, it's Maersk, it's MAN Energy Solutions, and it's Siemens Energy. And then in Asia, we have NYK Lines and Mitsubishi Energy with us. And on the American plate, you have American Bureau of Shipping and Cargill Group with us. And of course, all these companies are also all over the world. But basically, we had these 7 companies from the beginning. And the basic idea was not by any means to create an exclusive club or anything like that, but more to get the foundation established on this collaborative platform and then use that to really reach out to the leading companies of this world to get them on board. So what we're doing at the moment is that we're basically reaching out to, I would say, the next wave to get the next set of organizations in. And in doing that, we're very much aware of the need to get the entire supply chain represented. So it means that we are now negotiating with energy companies, we are negotiating with technology companies that, like utility company and technology company, that provide infrastructure and fabrication, energy conversion on land. We're working with terminal port, I would say port owners, operators, and we're working, of course, with more ship designers, with ship technology companies, with more ship owners, and of course also reaching out to work with authorities, governments, NGOs, and so on. So the point here is really that there's a supply chain that needs to be.
It's broad, isn't it?
It's really broad. It's really broad. So you'll be seeing today we announced a corporate partnership with Alfa Laval. And over the coming year, you will actually be seeing us announcing a number of partnerships throughout that supply chain. And it's so important for us to get that supply chain represented and to get leading companies within that supply chain that have ambitious decarbonization strategies and really want to put some skin in the game, you can say, to move the needle.
And how much influence do the partners and the members have in the projects that you're going to be developing?
We're basically setting up activities on 2 levels. So we're setting up a neutral, independent, not-for-profit activity, which is where we develop our positions, on what is possible and what is the best for society. We develop our positions on regulations, so what is practically implementable, what is good regulation. We will be working with authorities in terms of attracting subsidies and support to the transition. We'll be working with authorities to support regulation. We'll be working with financial institutions to convince them that it's good to invest in shipping. And all of that in shipping and in the needed infrastructure. And all of that work is not for profit. So that is neutral, not for profit work. And this work, I would say, is not influenced actually by these different partners. So we own that in the center, and we will put that forward. Now, having said that, we're going to work with a number of players in the ecosystem in order to actually learn and in order to develop our positions. And in that work, we can set up project agreements, and we can actually work on confidential things. We can work on helping companies to develop solutions and so on. And that will need to be done in a way with respect for these companies, proprietary rights and so on and so forth. So when you ask how are the companies going to influence the working of the center, the answer is they will be able to do that by working with us to help us understand what are the possibilities, what are the limitations, but they have no formal right to actually veto our positions or decide our positions. We need to do that ourselves, and with the donation from the A.P. Møller Foundation, we actually have the resources to establish a team in the center and to work independently of all that collaboration with the companies.
So the decisions will then be made by the board of the center?
It will ultimately be the responsibility of the board, and of course that will in the daily work be delegated to the leadership of the center.
And are there, I mean, the industry itself, the broader industry, has a broad section of ideas about the method of achieving the IMO's goals for decarbonisation. For example, the French carrier CMA-CGM has gone down the LNG route, and it's built LNG vessels with two-stroke engines from Wing GD. I can hardly say that, but anyway, Mærsk, on the other hand, has said LNG is not for us. It's a fossil fuel. We want to go directly to zero carbon. So I imagine that your board would have a similar kind of broad range of ideas and views. Is that difficult? How do you approach that?
I think that's not difficult, actually. I think the board is very much aware that obviously that the purpose of the center is to work for decarbonization of shipping, meaning 70,000 ships operating in all kinds of segments and trades and regions and so on. So the focus of, now you mentioned two container companies, the focus of CMA and Mærsk, I would say represent two segments, two areas of the center. And of course, two companies have their own business strategies, their own plans and so on. And it's absolutely evident that the center will actually be having, I would say, perspectives and positions that doesn't align, with every single company in this industry. So in this case, when it comes to LNG, we are working, and that is fully aligned with the board. We are working to also exploring LNG as an option, and our view to that will be to look at, what is the availability of not only LNG as a fossil fuel, but also LNG like synthetic and biomass-based fuels in the future. What's the availability going to be of that? What is the cost going to be of that? and how are we going to build ships in the future that can take advantage of such fuels as they become available. So I think our position at this point in time is that we are really open to basically to all the different opportunities that are potentially available to shipping. And we're taking a very, I would say, scientific and data-based and practical approach to that, to look at what are those different fuel types, when will they likely become available, what is the life cycle impact of those new fuel types, so meaning also what is the upstream impact producing, for example, bio LNG or synthetic e-fuel LNG, what would that be in that particular example you mentioned? And then, of course, to understand, given that availability and cost of these future fuels, how should we prepare the existing fleet to take that into use? And how should we actually build ships for the future that will be able to take those fuels into use as they become available? So this is really the exercise that we're working on at the moment, and it's a quite wide range of options when it comes to future fuels, as you know.
Yeah, I mean, but I'd like to stick with LNG for the minute, if you don't mind. LNG, according to UMass, is a fossil fuel, and in your name, it's zero carbon shipping. How do you equate looking at LNG with your name and your stated aim, which is to get rid of carbon?
When we say zero carbon, we mean carbon neutrality. So we basically mean that if you take one carbon molecule out of the atmosphere and you put it back in the atmosphere, that's basically climate neutral. So that for us would be okay to do that. So it's not like we have to go on hydrogen or ammonia, but we could actually accept to borrow, so to speak, a carbon molecule for a while. But of course, it has to be net zero. That's the important thing. So like I said, I mean, LNG could, from that perspective, could be an option as long as it's not fossil-based LNG.
So it'd have to be bioenergy. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's right. Or it could be produced synthetically, by producing hydrogen using, let's say, solar electricity from solar energy. You produce hydrogen, you combine that with a carbon, and then you get some methane.
Okay. And what do you do with the methane? Or do you consider that to be neutral?
Then we would consider that neutral, and we could burn that in an engine. Methane is natural gas, so we could burn that in an engine, and we would have a carbon or a climate neutral operation. So that's really the exercise we're looking at now.
Okay.
There's more.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on then, apart from LNG, what are your views about what might be the next steps for the industry?
So we believe that this transition is going to play out in a sequence where we will be seeing, first of all, we will be seeing the energy mix onshore, so to speak, changing, and that's partly driven by shipping, but it's also driven by a lot of other macro developments. So shipping is taking up a fairly limited part of the global energy mix. So there's a lot of development here that will be ongoing, basically regardless of what shipping does. So it's very much it's very important to understand that change of the global energy picture. So that is already ongoing, and that is going to continue to develop, and that is driven both by the national agendas, by the regional agendas, and also by sectorial drives, like we're seeing now in shipping. We'll be seeing a number of other sectors actually pushing ahead across national boundaries to actually move their sector towards climate neutrality. So these are all developments that are going to happen. And then you can say specifically within shipping, what we're going to see in shipping is that the trend of domestic shipping decarbonizing is going to continue. So we will be seeing here governments and domestic shipping actually developing because nations have committed to reducing local emissions. So that's an important driver, and therefore governments and nations are investing in ferries and national infrastructure to develop. So that's you could say that's a small part of the global development, but it's still actually very, very important development to see maturing. We will be seeing that also on regional level. So we'll be seeing, for example, shipping in EU between different countries being electrified and being decarbonized. And that is going to happen in the US, in Asia, and in other parts of the world, Australia, etc. So that's also a very important development. Then I do believe, and this is maybe the even more interesting part, we will also start to see parts of shipping that are more traditional, commercially driven, start to decarbonize. And this is really driven by industry stepping forward. So it's driven by customers being willing to pay a premium to get decarbonized shipping. These customers will work together with ship-owning companies to actually enable that decarbonized shipping. And these shipping companies will be working together with their supply chains to make sure that the fuels they are using and so on are actually decarbonized. And so in that space where actually we will start to see customers demanding zero carbon shipping and are willing to pay a little premium for that zero carbon shipping is actually also starting to happen now. We're seeing it with some of our partners. I could mention Mærsk here. They have a product where you can actually transport a container across the world in a zero carbon manner. You can pay a little premium for that, and Mærsk will then drop in some zero carbon fuels in order to make that happen. And we can see that also in other segments, in tanker shipping, in bulk shipping, in ro-ro shipping, in cruise, etc., etc. So I think that's a very, very interesting development, and it's something that doesn't require global regulation to happen. But of course, at the end of the day, in order to make all of this really scale up and get the entire shipping industry along, we will need global regulation. So I do believe we'll need to use all the confidence we gain by these other categories of projects in order to create confidence in IMO to actually get the global regulation in place. And that development is also ongoing, as you know, and it's moving at a slower pace than some of us would like to see. But it is moving and the strategy is in place. So I really believe that we need to keep up the good spirits and the good work and put even more focus to make it happen in IMO so that we get the entire industry along in this transition.
So the latest IMO greenhouse gas study basically says that 86% of all shipping emissions, carbon emissions, are from 6 vessel types: chemical tankers, product tankers, crude oil tankers, gas tankers, bulk carriers, general cargo ships, and container ships. And of those sectors, container ships, I think, is just around about 26% of all the emissions from maritime. Is it? And also crude oil tankers and bulk carriers are effectively 66% of all emissions from maritime. Those 3 sectors alone. Now, is it actually, because these vessels are deep sea, is it viable, do you think, to meet the challenge from the IMO of 30% reduction by 2030 and a 50% reduction by 2050? And if so, if it is viable, how will we do it?
You're absolutely right that the majority of the emissions come from tank, bulk, and container, and it's about 90%. So it's really important to understand how we do those deep sea, long distance hauls with decarbonized shipping. So at the end of the day, even if we have a lot of domestic shipping and those are the lower hanging fruits, those fruits are smaller, so to speak. So we need to use those to sort of give us the insights to move to the larger and more difficult segments. So how are we going to do that? I do believe that first of all, we will need global regulation in order to make sure that it becomes a level playing field, because this is going to be more costly than the fossil baseline. So it's going to be important to get a global framework that actually makes sure that everybody is playing on that with that set of rules. And then technically and financially and commercially, how are we going to do it? I think technically we will do it by now over the coming decade developing a number of options for the shipping industry. And I do believe that we're already seeing a picture which is technically possible. So we will be seeing ethanol, methanol, various types of biomaterial, ammonia, maybe methane, meaning natural gas. We will be seeing a number of these fuels, energy carriers, and we will be working with the technology providers in order to develop the solutions so that shipping can technically work with these new fuel types in a way which is at the right safety level and reliability level. And I mean, this should not be underestimated. The tasking in doing that should not be underestimated. The shipping is today working at a very high level of reliability and safety, and we need to maintain those level of safety for these new fuels. And the risk of being set back by bad accidents by using these new fuels, I think really needs to be put into the mix here. So we need to have a very good understanding of the risks we're working with during this transition. So that's an important part of the technical side, to really understand in a qualified manner how we technically make that shift. And this is doable. I mean, the industry has done this a number of times before. It's a tremendously competent industry with technology providers that are innovative, that are used to working with development of new technologies, with class societies that have great in-depth understanding and great understanding of the processes needed to manage these risks. So, and we have shipyards that are used to integrating technologies and so on. So I strongly believe that the industry has the capability to actually do it. And there's a strong drive now to actually do it. So you are seeing the engine manufacturers actually stepping up and putting very strong R&D programs in place. You're seeing all the class societies moving. You're seeing new technology vendors coming into the maritime mix with fuel cells and a number of new technologies. So I think we're seeing a lot of developments that could potentially enable the shipping industry to scale up by the end of the century, which is what is going to be needed. So I think on the technical side also, on the regulatory side, we will have to make it happen in IMO. On the technical side, I think the industry has what it takes to do it. And then on the commercial side and the financial side, I think we're also seeing some very, very strong developments. So customers are increasingly now demanding zero carbon shipping. The fact that customers are now having such a concern about the so-called scope 3 with the CO2 footprint of their supply chain is a big driver. And it of course also means that the financial institutions, they are very focused on the ESG, and their risk analysis is very focused on on the businesses that they are financing actually having business in the future. So I think all of these dots are now starting to be connected in a very powerful manner. So it's basically looking into a movement ahead of us, I think, where regulation, finance, the commercial drive, and now also the technical innovation. Actually, we have a window here where all of those four elements could move forward in a somewhat coupled and concerted manner.
In my opinion, and this is just me, you know, I'm an outsider from the industry, if you like, but in my opinion, the weaknesses there are twofold, and that's the economic side, the commercial side, if you like, and the regulatory side. And on the regulatory side, there are 174 nations who are member states of the IMO, so UN body. They very rarely agree on anything. It's very slow to shift the debate along. And I mean, as far as I can tell, the consensus is that there is a necessity for some kind of equalizing of the cost. Now, you mentioned the cost. Fossil fuels are very cheap. New fuels are going to be more expensive. We need some kind of levy on the new fuels in order to make that an equitable equation for people to use the new fuels. But the political will to do that doesn't seem to be at the IMO. And in fact, the European Union became so frustrated with it that it's shifted on its own and is moving to an emissions trading scheme for shipping and for airlines as well. Is this really? I mean, are we really moving towards this, or is this just a fake news, if you like? I don't know what you'd call it. Some kind of, you know, moving too slowly. Maybe that's the better way of putting it.
I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact that we are really on, I would say, an exponential curve of growth here in terms of mobilizing this whole system. And I think really what we're seeing is, and we hear this actually from, I would say, all our stakeholders, that it's very true that it has moved way too slowly. If you look at the developments needed compared to what we should have seen. But it's also very true that as we are speaking, the attention to this is growing at a very, very rapid and I would say accelerating speed. So the way that financial institutions are now stepping up the game, the way that customers are now increasingly demanding decarbonized products and services is really creating a movement. And I think, for example, the fact that this center, the Mærsk Mc-Kinney Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, has been established by 7 leading companies that want to see a change. I think that illustrates very well that there's a lot of drive in industry. Maybe more in industry than amongst the regulators, but in industry, there's a huge drive to make it happen. And I think that's probably also one of the systemic changes that we're seeing, that we have a large part of the industry which is not waiting for regulation to move. We have a large part of industry that really wants to move. And so we will be seeing this moving. And I strongly believe that once this movement reaches a critical mass, IMO will also move. So it's true that things have taken a long time in IMO on certain things. It's also true that we're seeing an acceleration on this topic right now, which has probably never been seen before. I don't believe you saw this kind of acceleration when it came to, for example, the sulfur problem or ballast water or NOx. This has a level of attention which is almost beyond imagination. and the complexity and the grandness of the challenge is also almost beyond the imagination. But it is really there.
That may be the case, but the IMO itself is a fragmented organization. Shipping itself, in the broader shipping, not just container shipping, is a very fragmented industry. Many of the owners own 2 or 3 ships, but a lot of them are flagged out to flag registrations, which are quite small, and they have a lot of power in those flags, and that has in the past prevented the IMO from moving at a reasonable pace for regulation. Isn't it? I mean, I think that's what happened with ballast water, apart from the fact that there wasn't the technology for ballast water to work. But it also happened with sulfur. It happened with the coatings bans. Or it seems to me that IMO and the UN is hamstrung, and it needs a helping hand, doesn't it?
I think it needs actually a lot of help to understand the risks and the opportunities ahead. And I think, I mean, we take a slightly naive approach to this, thinking that if we can help to create confidence and understand the risks ahead, that'll be a contribution to accelerating. And then, of course, we're very humble to the IMO system, for sure, because like you said, IMO is made up of a lot of members, and those members, I mean, are not necessarily aligned, and it's hard sometimes to interact with those. But on the other hand, there's a lot of focus on this, and I think the bottom line here is that yes, there is a risk for some of these countries and ship owners to go into a journey of decarbonization. So there is a task for us to clarify what are actually those risks and what can we do to remove those risks, like we did with the sulfur regulation. I mean, there was a lot of work done to actually remove the risks. So when we did the review 5 years before it went into force, we did the fuel availability review and concluded that the fuels will be available. That same kind of risk analysis will need to be done now on decarbonization to really make sure that the risks are removed, that it's possible to actually decarbonize shipping. So obviously, I mean, that needs to be done, and that needs to be communicated, and it needs to be done in a very, I would say, strong manner. And I mean, from the center side, the whole idea of the center is really for us to be an open source, so that we want to work with everybody, also in the IMO system, in order to create the confidence that it is possible to decarbonize shipping. So that's the one thing. That's talking about the risks and removing the risks of decarbonizing shipping. And then there's the other side, and that's the risk of not doing anything. And that needs to be understood as well, because there's a huge risk for shipping also to just pretend that we don't have a problem and we don't want to do anything. So I think that's the other part of the coin, that you need to make clear that if shipping goes out an alley where we're basically saying that we don't want to change anything, you can do the decarbonization, we're sticking with fossil fuel, then shipping is running a big risk. And I think that needs to be understood as well amongst the members in IMO. And then, of course, many of the countries and regions in IMO, they have shipping as a good business, and each of those countries, they have different kinds of industries and businesses in the countries that they basically need to take care of. So it's also to respect that countries have, of course, a global perspective, but they also have a national perspective, meaning that shipping also plays into the ability and the competitiveness of local industries and so on. So I think we also have a task in explaining what is actually the cost of shipping in the future. So if you're shipping sort of low value goods out of your country, and that's an important part of your national economy, then we need to be able to explain what are the implications of that, and really make countries confident that it's not actually a big risk to go to a world where shipping is slightly more expensive than it is today. So I think, there's a lot of nuances in this, and there's a lot of work to be done in that IMO system to really create the confidence that it is possible to decarbonize shipping. There are risks in there, but we have time actually to mitigate those risks and to let it be a transition pathway which is well understood and where those risks can be mitigated for the key players.
And are there any lessons that we can learn in collaboration, etc., from what's happened in the last year with the pandemic? Is there a lesson there?
There's a lot we can learn from the pandemic, and I mean, one of the things for sure is about collaboration. So we have seen from the center, and I'm sure everybody has experienced that the fact that we are not able to travel in a way has brought us further from each other, but in a way it has also brought us closer to each other, because right now we had just a click away from a meeting with Japan or US or Australia or Africa or China. It's really been amazing. It's been amazing for us in the center here to be able to connect so so smooth with all these different regions of the world, and it actually enables a global collaboration that we haven't really seen before. So there are a lot of learnings around this pandemic that we have to take with us when, I would say, hopefully very soon we get to a world where we can also meet physically.
And digitalization, then you hinted at it in that response there, that is also a key element to what you'll be doing at the Zero Carbon Center and shipping more broadly.
Oh yes, absolutely. We'll definitely be working with digital to see how that can play into new ways of driving shipping. We're talking very much like this transition as basically a transition of fuel types, but it's really much more than that. I do believe we'll be seeing new business models developing, new ways of interacting in that supply chain. So I mean, we're looking into a future where, driven by higher energy costs and new players, new ecosystems, will also be seeing completely new ways of doing business here. So that's also very, very exciting, and I'm sure we will find very exciting new ways of optimizing actually the way we connect the world in this global infrastructure, where we're using ships still as a physical asset to transport the goods around, but you can imagine all kinds of new constellations of connections and interactions, which actually doesn't have to be anywhere near the way we do it today.
Okay. And do you envisage there will be new technologies or new innovations in something like carbon capture and storage that will help us to meet the 2030 targets, for example?
Oh yes, I think within carbon capture, for example, we will be seeing a lot of innovations. Carbon capture hasn't been used much in the past, but right now I think the world is acknowledging that in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the rate needed, carbon capture and storage is going to be needed at a large scale. And this means that there's a lot of room actually for innovations and inventions here. So carbon capture is one area, and we're seeing across, a number of different areas that a lot of innovations ongoing within the space of biofuels, biomass. We'll be seeing a lot within the space of nuclear. We'll probably be seeing a lot within the space of energy conversion technologies, taking electrons and turning them into molecules, as we say, with various kinds of processes, we will need to see huge improvements in efficiency. So, I mean, it's going to be a super exciting decade we have ahead of us, and we are already right in the middle of that, seeing, new things coming up across the board. So it's very exciting, really.
Okay, well, we're really excited to see what you can come up with at the centre. So perhaps you'll come back and tell us more in a year or two. It's been really great talking to you, Bo, and thank you very much for sparing the time.
Thank you very much, Nick. It was really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time, and talk to you soon.